Well, you spent your whole pro career racing in some of the most beautiful places in the world, yet you don't ever really get to experience them. All you ever see is...
I would love to be that guy more often. So you don't get any of that. You get a different experience for sure, but you don't get any of like these panoramic views.
It seems like the participants are divided into a couple of camps. The first camp, then the second bunch, which I feel are the majority. But then there's the kind of third cohort that you're in, which has committed to just full send mode. Is there a part of you going, if I do need to sleep out here, I am quite screwed?
You're totally right. And I think it's probably like 90% of the people are in that like bring sleep stuff category because they're normal. And then there's like, that crazy 10%.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Anthony. I'm a former lawyer turned cyclist turned podcast host who is based in Ireland. My goal with this channel is to introduce you to the people and to the ideas to help you optimize your health, your happiness, and your longevity. Today, we have Badlands winner, Mr. Rob Britton, joining us. You're going to love this interview. For those of you who might not be familiar, Rob's no stranger to the world of professional cycling. He competed at the highest levels on the road, and he's well known for his resilience, his tactical skills, and his strategic acumen. But today, we're not going to talk about road cycling at all. We're going to dive deep into Rob's incredible recent win at Badlands. Badlands isn't just a race. It's not like a normal bike race. It's a grueling ultra endurance event that tests not only your physical capabilities, but also your mental fortitude. It's a race where the terrain is basically as difficult as it comes, where every mile you pedal seems like a battle against nature and a battle internally against yourself. We'll be discussing everything from Rob's training regime to his race day strategy to how participating in such ultra distance events affects long-term health and well-being. Now, before I jump into this conversation with Rob, I do have one small favour to ask. If you could take a second and subscribe to the channel, as still around 90% of viewers aren't subscribed, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests I can attract, so it's a win-win all around. With all that being said, this is the Roadman Cycling Podcast, and now, my dear friends, Mr. Rob Britton. Rob, welcome back to the Roadman Cycling Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to chat again.
You're looking surprisingly fresh.
Well, yeah. I've had about 3.5 weeks now, pretty much entirely off the bike since crossing the finish line at Badlands.
I suppose first off, congratulations. 1 day, 14 hours and 20 minutes. Seems like a long time to pedal your bike, but you were the fastest through Badlands.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you say like that. It sounds shorter than 37 hours, 38 hours. Yeah, it was something else. Yeah, it was definitely an event or a ride or experience that it's still catching up to me. Sort of in like the, I don't know, mental processing or just like taking it all in. Like during it, I tried to, obviously capture it and like, experience what I'm seeing because, I spent a career not doing that. But then at a certain point, like your brain just goes on to like, we need to finish this and also not crash. So you do have to be pretty switched on for a day and a half. But yeah, that was something.
Did you have an expectation going into it? Like how did that expectation or thought of what the event might be like pan out with the reality of what it was like?
Yeah, it was actually relatively similar to, so I did like a pretty big single day ride on Vancouver Island earlier this year, about a month and a half before actually, or about a month before. And this one was pretty similar. The biggest things you have to get ready for with these is for sure, like going through the night, that sleep deprivation, and just, I remember Lachlan telling me about this, and I didn't, you can't fully understand it until you actually experience it. And it's just this deep fatigue where you just get hit with like waves and waves of, you just want to sleep and you just want to go to bed and rest and you close your eyes because you're physically tired and you can deal with that, but mentally, that's the biggest thing with these things. And that was probably what I was prepared for the most, is cruising through the night smoothly and efficiently. Um, so that was a big piece of it. Heat, I thought was going to be a big part, but it actually ended up raining for the first half, like the first day. It was super wet. It was super wet and like cold for like, the desert of Spain, which was kind of hilarious. We had to wear a rain vest. But yeah, and then it flipped the next day and was like 38 degrees, like not a breath of wind for a while. So you're just baking on these climbs. So yeah, being prepared for the heat, I felt I was ready for it. And then the sleep deprivation, the fatigue was the other part. And I do feel like I was definitely prepared for that, as I'd kind of had some very recent experience with that fatigue as well.
Did you have a pacing strategy? Like, I know there's a climb basically as soon as you get out of town, which is sticky enough and everyone's super excited. But you led the race basically from start to finish. Was there a strategy here? Because I remember talking to Leah Wilcox, and she was saying she just tootles up the first climb, and then it's, a bit of a slowly, creepy for the rest of the day, where she just starts picking people off. But it seems like you actually went out a little bit hard to maintain that track position, and then just sat on your wattage from there. Looks quite easy when you're at home drinking a cup of tea, eating chocolate muffins, watching the dot. But I'm sure the reality wasn't the same.
It was pretty funny. Yeah, I didn't feel I felt good in the first 4 or 5 hours, and then I actually started to feel quite bloated. So it was pretty uncomfortable for a decent chunk of it. But yeah, I had this, I knew it had started out fast the year before, and I knew where Seb, my buddy from Schwabi, or teammate from Schwabi, had gone solo the year before.
Seb on his good lad.
Yeah. So Seb had given me a really good breakdown of his experience the year before, so I knew roughly from that maybe how to pace it. But this is so bad. So it was pretty fast, and we were 7 hours in or something like this, 6.5 hours in. And they kind of I think I can understand just enough Spanish, and I was like, I think they're making fun of me riding in my aero bars whenever we get on the road. And I was like, well, hell yeah, that's why I brought them. These things are great. And then I was like, okay, well, if you're gonna laugh at my aero bars, you can try to keep up. So then I just basically attacked with, I don't know, 550K to go or something, and was either by myself or with one or two other guys for the remainder of it. I never saw anybody again.
That's one of those ones, if it doesn't work, you just look like such a douche. Or if they roll back up to you 25K later.
Well, the thing is, it's so long. I'm like, whatever. I know I can do this for a very, very long time. And it's when I say attack, it was pretty funny because I think I took it up to 330 watts on the climb. But it's just such 330 watts, extrapolated into whatever 2-day long race is. That's a 600 watt attack, that's one of 6 bullets you have.
That's Badlands maths.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so the pace for sure at the start, I was like, whoa, geez, okay, this is going to be excessive. And where it got concerning was we stopped. I was with one other dude, and we kept changing. He was awesome to ride with. I just saw him. We were just down to just cruise. Neither of us really attacked each other. We were both just good for pushing the pace. And when we stopped at Gore, which is the main kind of our last really refuel place before you go into the night. And in the past, I've always gotten there basically at sunset, and they're reasonable. So they sit down and they have a meal, they to spend more than a minute. This was a friggin' F1 stop. We were just in there, and he's like, bocadillo, fruits. Okay, let's go. And I'm like, fuck, man. It's it's 6:30, and straight up the door you have an hour and a half long climb. I think it's 12 or 1,300 meter climb. Just you're partway up it, and you just keep going up. And I have no idea how far we are ahead of everybody else, but I'm thinking we've been alone for about 4 hours at this point. So I'm sure we're a ways ahead of anybody else. But we were in there I think it was for sure less than 15 minutes total. And okay, sure, took 2 bites of my sandwich, had 2 Cokes, drank one, pocketed the other one, took 2 bananas, and I think filled up my water bottles. And I just remember like walking out, and he's like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna go up the road, but I'll ride slow. You can catch up." I'm like, "Okay, sure." And I'm doing the math in my head as I'm leaving. Like, okay, it's 6:30. We're gonna ride through the night now. There's gonna be nothing open, like probably until 7 a.m. at best. Like, this is Spain, and it's going from a Sunday to a Monday. Things are already closed, so it's like it's not like we've been like hitting every stop on the way. I've stopped twice at this point, or I guess 10 and a half hours in. And now we're about to go through the night for about 13 hours almost until the next food stop. And I have 2 bananas, a Coke, like a bocadillo, like basically meat, cheese, bread, baguette. And I certainly don't have 13 hours worth of ride food on my bike. I don't know what he has in his bag, but mine aren't just stuffed with food. So I was thinking, like, well, what the hell am I going to do for the next 13 hours? Like, what? So that was like, as far as pacing goes, that's where I started to get like, okay, well, we got to put this in like cruise control and just like moderate the effort, and I don't know, switch to ketosis or something, like, because things are about to get like,
just flick that switch.
Yeah, it's like it was about to get weird. And yeah, you just sort of like, I remember I think I got to the top of the climb and I was starving and just like smashed the boat. I'm like, okay, now I have like 5 pieces of food and like some drink mix to get me through the next like 10 hours. Like, cool, sure. And
that does seem to be the way to stay moving, is the key. That chatting to Lael, it totally made sense on me the next week when I was just out on a group ride. And even if you stop for a piss on the group ride, and the group is just tipping along at normal group ridey speed, 35k an hour, and you stop for 60 seconds, you're chasing pretty damn hard to catch that group. And that's after a 60-second stop. So if you start amplifying that out, as Lael was saying, and you say, well, somebody stops for 15 minutes and you don't stop for 15 minutes, you just keep moving and take a 60-second stop, it starts getting really difficult to bridge these gaps.
For sure. The thing, and like I don't have experience in this really. I've done stuff on my own, so I don't have any way to extrapolate what that equals. And then I've done this one Badlands. So my experience is like, I pushed the gap out pretty hard. And I knew, generally speaking, I would just like, the bike is really fast, like, and I can like, generally speaking, probably move it a bit faster than most people to a certain a certain duration. Like, after a certain point, like, these ultra guys are for sure going to have a leg up on me as far as like the pace they can go. They're probably going to be more comfortable after 30 hours, but we only have 7 hours to go. So they're not going to be that much more comfortable. But for a 24-hour period, it's like I can probably produce more watts and the bike is more aerodynamic. So it's like, I figured I'd make that gap as big as I could and then just buffer it with like efforts when I needed to, but then take care of myself in the like kind of in the back 9. Like, I had 2 different naps for 7 minutes.
Nice, luxurious.
Yeah, no, like straight up, like set the timer on the phone for 7 minutes, put it on my chest, closed my eyes, and I was in like a coma. And then probably stopped. If you look at the like the Strava file for the last 10 hours, I probably stopped 15 times just for like these little breaks to give my nervous system a break. Like, I'd even just stop, like unclip both feet down and just like hang my head, like, and just count for 30 seconds just to give my eyes and brain a break from like processing everything. And then like open them and you're like, okay, you come back to life, and that like recharges you for like another few hours. But it's just so much, like for me, it was just so much on like, the nervous system.
Did you have a pacing strategy? Did you, like you're saying, you front loaded and you went out quite hard to establish that gap? But after you got the gap, obviously the Ostro's a fast bike and you're in the skis. Some of the lads mightn't have had those. But are you sitting on a power figure?
No, not at all. You just sort of sit, like, I've done it for so long. It's just like, I just know what like a sustainable resistance is. The funny thing is, like, when you go back and look at it, like, I remember like, pacing strategy, like, not at all. It was definitely just like, this feels like a low zone 2 almost feeling. I'll just do this. The funny thing is, when you go back and look at what that was, it was like sitting at 220 for a really long time. And then it's like after 24 hours, it was like 180. And then you just get these big spikes because the last bit is just like huge climb. That's like just on absolute like shit roads, like just these blown out blast rock gravel thing. This climb from hell out of Almeria. And you got saddle sores. So you're just like kind of like limping up this thing and getting kicked in the butt like every 2 pedal strokes for 2.5 hours. And then super steep grades. So it's like the torque is so high and you're so blown. It's like you can't even produce power really. It's like you're just like winching yourself up this thing. And then once you go downhill, like you're so happy to be going downhill. It's like you do not pedal at all. So it's like your average watts in the last 12 just plummet because of just fatigue and terrain. Like the last bit just has so much sting in the tail. So pace wise, I definitely didn't have like a wattage strategy in any of these things that I've done, like with the long rides. It just seems to be such an undertaking. It's more just sort of what feels like a good load, but is hilariously low power. Like if you tried to ride to power, I think you would just crumble, or at least I would.
Let me take a second to talk about today's show sponsor because I have something really exciting to share with you. It's a game changer that's been making a noticeable difference in my performance recently, especially when it comes to sleep. Allow me to introduce you to Pillar. While we're all familiar with the importance of electrolytes and carbohydrates in our race preparation, Pillar is taking a different route. It's focusing on something called micronutrition, ensuring that you're ready to perform even before you ever hit the start line. It's all about promoting a good night's sleep, facilitating effective recovery and replenishing those crucial micronutrients so you can perform at your best. Over the past month, I've been incorporating Pillar's triple magnesium supplement into my routine. I take it every evening, about 30 minutes or so before bed, and I've seen a remarkable improvement in my sleep quality. I've been tracking my sleep with my Whoop device, and the results, they're there every morning when I wake up in black and white. I'm waking up with about a 10% improvement in my restorative sleep. I'm waking up feeling refreshed. Having had that deep restorative sleep, I'm now ready to attack work, training, and life the next day. But don't just take my word for it. Let the data from your fitness tracker tell the story. So if you're ready to elevate your performance and the quality of your sleep, why not give Pillar a try? Head over to pillarperformance.shop and use the code ROADMAN on your local website for 15% off your first order. Or for US listeners, if you head over to defeed.com/pillar and use code ROADMAN for the same 15% off your order. The details of this offer are in the description below. Is there a case that you can switch off a little bit under the sensor, or are they technical enough that you're still plugged in and mentally aware?
Fully both things. Like the road stuff was sweet. Like I would just look at the head unit and just see like, you can tell when it's going to switch back, which is obviously knowing that takes a huge load off. And you can relax a bit more. And once it got dry there, I knew the roads were pretty grippy, so I wasn't stressed out. The first day when it was wet was like terrifying because it hadn't rained there in like months. So it's like, what Spain's like when it rains for the first time. The road, like pavement is just like ice. So you actually have to be really careful the first day. Quite a few people crashed. But the dirt descents, I mean, man, you come from BC, like it's not going to be like once you can handle riding there, like yeah, riding the descents in Spain is like pretty chill. But I was more the second night going into the finish, like as you descend down to Capilla, and I was definitely more conservative there just because I'm like, okay, I've got the lead. I should like win this. If I cut my tire in half, that could be a problem. So it's like, let's just back it off a bit. But other than that, yeah, no, it's pretty chill. Like there's nothing too like, there's definitely technical parts, but you just have to be like switched on when you need to be. But for the most part, it seemed like the technical stuff came during the day when I was like mentally pretty with it.
It seems like the participants are divided into a couple of camps. The first camp are like, okay, we're going to take a week or whatever to do this, and we're going to find accommodation if we can. Then the second bunch, which I feel are the majority, are people that are prepared to sleep rough and they bring sleep supplies. They have mats, they have a bivy bag, maybe luxurious stuff like Lachlan has eye masks when I've seen him on some of the ultra adventure stuff. But then there's the kind of third cohort that you're in, which has committed to just full send mode. So I assume you're not bringing bivy bags and sleep mats with you because it's extra weight. But is there a part of you going, if I do need to sleep out here, I am quite screwed because I don't have a down jacket, I don't have the sleep stuff I need?
Yeah, so you're totally right. And I think it's probably like just like 90% of the people are in that like bring sleep stuff category because they're normal. And then there's like, yeah, that crazy 10%. And I remember like just being like, what? You don't sleep? You just, what? I don't, okay. But so I did that kind of practice one in on the island. Okay, all right, we can do this all right. But then I did have to sleep at one point. I just fell asleep on a bench, like sitting upright. I was like, okay, we're gonna need to take a nap, I think, for Badlands. And that's when I realized you get so tired. Man, you could be on a bed of like broken glass, like in the middle of the day, and you would pass out. If you didn't set an alarm, you wouldn't wake up. That's the kind of fatigue I was talking about. And like that's why these like 7 minute like power naps are like all you need because you were just that tired. Like the first nap I had was like literally on the side of a gravel road. It just looked like a relatively flat, smooth-ish spot. And you don't take anything off. You just set your bike there and like lay down on the ground and you're out. And then the next one was in like a basketball court in some shade through a town, just on the concrete. And I just laid down and I was out. Man, like an air mattress would just be like wasting precious time to like you could be spending sleeping, and like it doesn't matter. If I was going to be out there for more time, I think like this is how crazy this world's become. It's like Badlands is considered like a micro, or like no, what is it? A sprint distance ultra. So the big ones,
Nuts.
yeah, I know exactly. And I'm like, what the fuck? Okay, but I think where sleep gear comes in handy or is more practical is kind of in that 1,000-kilometer range where you're pushing through 2 full nights, which you just, from my understanding of most people, like that's where you probably have to have like an hour, like or two, at some point in there sleeping. Like even when I did my BC Epic last year, I think I only slept for less than 2 hours total for the whole thing. One time was about an hour and a half, or around an hour and a half with like my bag, and then the second time was just on a ferry on a bench. But I don't think I would have survived just like sleeping like on a park bench or something like that. But maybe that depends too. Like Spain's hot, so you don't necessarily need to have a big puffer. But I usually have enough stuff that if I did need to sleep and like it was a case of exposure, I'd be okay. I'd rather bring like an extra down jacket that I don't use than need one and not have it.
Well, you spent your whole pro career racing in some of the most beautiful places in the world. Yet, we talked about this in a previous podcast. You don't ever really get to experience them. All you ever see is hotel, team bus, wheel on front, team bus, hotel, wheel on front. And you walk away from a pro career and technically you've been to almost every country in the world, but now you need to go back and start visiting them because you've missed all the stuff. Oh, I've never actually seen these tourist sites. Was there not a party in this that's just like, go and experience the desert and actually take, stock of what's around me? I know Taylor Finney last year rode it in 4 days, probably had quite a supply of magic mushrooms with him, a pair of flip-flops, a mountain bike, and really took stock of it. Was there a party that wishes you'd done it like that? Or are you always just going to be the competitor?
I hope that I would love to be that guy more often. Yeah, and I think as I transition and move around in like this kind of post like pro road racing part of my career, I do feel like even still like I experience it, take it in a lot more than I did before. Even during Badlands, I made like a conscious point to like look around, like even on these descents, and really try to take it in when I could. And you do kind of, or at least I get kind of bummed out, like when like riding through the night hike, it has a certain allure to it. It's kind of cool. It's really cool. But you are also missing out on like, some of these, you go over a mountain and like, it's not like you're just in a tree cave the whole time, right? Like there's going to be amazing, huge like views. So you don't get any of that. You get a different experience for sure, but you don't get any of like these panoramic views. So during Badlands, I really did like you try as best you can to like absorb that and retain it and like be part of the experience, because that's kind of what you're doing. Like stuff like this, like you're doing it not just like the race is, you know, a big part of it, and trying to get a good result is important, but like you say, it's like I spent a career just like always focused. And then, you know, I think we talked about in the last podcast where I drove down the coast of California and I was like, this is stunning. And I have raced this no less than 3 times in California. Like, and I don't remember any of it, you know? Like this is the stuff they make car commercials out of. And then Badlands was just that. It's like, you know, you're back there, and it was crazy too, because of the weather we had. It was just like, we were seeing stuff that they never see, like just crazy skies and the storm coming in, and just the contrast of like this orange, like sand that looks like you're riding through Grand Canyon. So yeah, so there was stuff like that I really tried to retain. But this, to your point, like at the same time, you're also in a bike race and you are pretty like, you have to be switched on, especially when you're still in a group. Like there's no way to like get around like a racing mentality in a group and like also be like looking around and like taking in the smell of the roses. But yeah, trying to find a balance, I think, for me is really important now in this kind of second phase of my career, because that is a big reason why I go to a lot of these places. And like the allure of doing certain events is like where they are, not just because it's like, you know, a prestigious event.
Badlands posted a picture of you on their Instagram after finishing, and the finish, I think it was actually a video, and the finish just looks, it's not Tour of California, let's just say that. It's exceptionally low-key finish. What's the first thing you do after such an excruciating distance and going to the pits of fatigue in a mental and physical sense? What are you reaching for? Or what's your first experiences? Or are you calling home to say you're safe?
I was super fortunate, actually. My wife Ricky was there at the finish, so that was pretty special for me. First thing I did was just like get off the bike and not sit down anymore. But yeah, it's just, I think with those big, massive events, it's like you're just so happy to be done, and you unclip and you're like, okay, life is better now. Like the pain has stopped. You know, you're going to go to bed and have a nice sleep now. I knew she'd already checked me in. She had like somehow a hot, fresh pizza and like a cold beer waiting. So
she's a keeper.
Man, that was like the greatest thing in the world. Those are 2 things I absolutely love. And after something like this, I'm like, this might be the best pizza I think I've. This could be the world's best pizza right in Capilla. Like, who knew? You know? So that was pretty incredible. And then, yeah, it's funny because time just becomes like this weird thing. Like you don't even realize how little, like I thought I was there for like an hour and a half, but the guy who finished second was only an hour behind me. And like I was at home in bed by the time he crossed the line, and I thought I'd been there for ages, but I basically finished, smashed a beer, crushed the whole pizza, and then like limped, because there's no way I was getting back on the bike, like limped back to the hotel room. So that all happened within an hour. So yeah, when you finish, it's just like the euphoria of being done feels incredible, because you don't have to suffer anymore. And then yeah, food and beer, like something that's not sugar or just plain water, is like a pretty nice change.
Excuse the short interruption, but I wanted to find a way to bring our little community together, to problem solve, to share training advice, and to support each other in what can sometimes be a lonely road as we all chase health, happiness, and longevity through cycling. To facilitate this, I've set up a Discord channel. I'm going to leave a link in the description down below. It doesn't cost anything to join. It's totally free. Plus, I'm also picking out random winners for spot prizes inside the Discord channel. If you'd like to join it, click on the link down below. What's the legacy impact of riding an event like this, both mentally and physically? Because I have friends that have ridden at this year's event and last year's edition, and they've had some strange injuries. One of them was a bike mechanic last year, and he couldn't use his hands for like a couple of months afterwards. He'd no feeling in his fingers, just hadn't got that dexterity to shred cables and stuff.
Yeah, that's super common. I get numb hands near the end. I wore gloves this time for the first time. I've only done a couple, but um, yeah, I decided to wear gloves, and I think it did help prolong kind of like general paralysis. I still have like a bit of numbness and like these two, just a bit, like the dexterity is still there. I can do like move my hands. Um, they're usually kind of numb for a few days afterwards, just because you're like crushing the nerve for so long. And then same thing like in your elbow, like you're just sitting there. Um, I think something like a Fox taper cast fork would be good for something like that. But for me, actually, yeah, I like fucked myself. Yeah, I've been off the bike for like 3 weeks now, which is kind of annoying because it's pretty much killed the back part of my season. And that it's killed the back part of my season. Yeah, sleep gets totally destroyed because you give yourself like jet lag without going anywhere. You don't sleep for 2 days. Hands are numb, but that came back. I'm not worried. Like this seems to be normal enough. But then, yeah, I didn't ride. Like we were on full vacation mode afterwards, which was fine. I needed to take some time off anyways. But then I kind of got like sciatica in my back. My feet are still kind of like tingling. Like the nerves are still jacked. They're getting better, but slowly. And then because of all that, like my hips are like basically fell apart. So now I can't ride without knee pain because my like can't seem to get my hips lined up. So I need to get physio. So I had this whole second part of the season planned, doing like world championships and stuff, and I've had to kind of like pull out of that because you have to be able to ride a bike, well, race a bike, and I can barely ride it for like an hour without quite a bit of pain. And so I think that was probably and then throw in a transatlantic like 13-hour set of flights, just sitting in one position. So I think when you combine all that stuff, like obviously super tight muscles, probably just a boatload of inflammation, not riding for a week, just like on recovery mode, but also like I needed to do something, and I didn't do anything like bike related, but I was walking around a bunch, which is about like a totally different mechanism. And then the final piece of it was like, I think the flight back home. And I remember getting off the flight and I was like, yeah, my feet feel like really pins and needly. Like I don't know if this is good. And then like 2 days later, it was just like the whole like posterior chain just like detonated, and like couldn't ride. Feet were jacked, like lower back. Like I think it's not like pain. It's just sort of, yeah, like pins and needles, like slight pinched nerve. Everything is like piano wire tight. So it's just, I've had like stuff like this years ago. Actually, the year I did Worlds, and Woods was third. I survived that race on like a leave and Tylenol. Like I was in so much pain. But when I got off the flight the day afterwards, I could barely walk off the plane. I was like, my knees were jacked, my back was jacked, and it took like about a month of like physiotherapy to get back. And it's like, yeah, so there's a lot to it. I think that some people are lucky enough not to get, and other people aren't so lucky. And like I say, I haven't had a ton of experience. Like when I did the one in Vancouver Island, like it was fine. Like I didn't have any of this stuff, like a little bit of like the pins and needles and tingling, but I think it's because I was sleeping in my own bed, like, sitting in the Normatex, like, I had like went for a nice easy spin on my road bike, flat ground versus, 15,000 steps a day for a week, and like sleeping in a form bed and some airport travel and that kind of stuff. Like it's good for the brain for sure.
Yeah,
Massively good for the brain, but it was just the body, I guess. Now I know like it didn't love that. So yeah, it's when you talk about kind of some long-term effects, yeah, we're looking at almost a month out now and still kind of like screwed.
Do you think these ultra endurance events, not just Badlands, but in general, we're seeing this more democratization of these ultra events? They used to be for quite a fringe part of the cycling group. Now we're seeing a lot more cycling participation in these events. Do you think they have a long-term effect on health and well-being?
I don't think they're that good for you. but I don't think anything like at an
Yeah,
extreme
I'm not
is.
sure.
I think,
Like if you do 2 or 3 of them in a year, it just doesn't seem like a good idea.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily argue, but I also think doing 3 grand tours in a year is probably not that good of a idea, and Steph would probably argue, and rightfully so. I think for some people it affects them differently. I think the way you do it, like you say, if you go into it with proper sleeping stuff and a bit more of a relaxed pacing strategy. Obviously, I think these are like super challenging any way you cut it. It's just not sleeping for 2 days and like that kind of stuff is like a bit much, I think, for anybody to do lots of in a year. Like some of these people, they're totally wired to do it. I go to a pretty dark place when I do these things, it turns out, which is fine. I don't mind the pain. Like it is what it is. It's just like, yeah, my body definitely revolts after the fact. But yeah, I definitely question its health and like its actual like long-term effects. And yeah, like I say, each person's different, but maybe if you don't ride it as hard as you can, it has less of an effect. But like you say, your mate with the hands, like I think that's a super normal. That's really common. Like lots of people like are left with like these 3 fingers, especially because the nerve runs out, and like those are jacked from a lot of people all the time. Yeah, I think it's a lot for sure.
So the injury's kind of taking you out of finish of the Lifetime Grand Prix this season, Gravel Worlds. Are you going into winter mode as soon as you rehab this and start building for next year? Or have you started thinking about next year yet? Have you let yourself think about it, or do you need to recover?
Well, yeah, ironically, on the tail end of like that last statement, I also have across Andes in November that I'd still really like to do. That's a 1,000 kilometer.
Nice, that sounds chill.
Yeah, ultra race in Patagonia. So yeah, so obviously I'm just as ignorant as I am. Yeah, intelligent. So no. Hopefully, I'd like to be able to get the body. Like the thing is, you don't need to be super fit for these things. Like as far as like racing goes, you need to be like, or sorry, you don't need to be super fast for these things. For me, you just need to be fit and fresh. Like I went into Badlands quite fit, like good engine, like was feeling good, but I was super fresh. I gained probably 5 pounds the week before, like just like full vacation mode, knowing full well that I'd use it during the race, and I did. I think that's what got me through that like 13-hour window. I was just like crazy fueled, but and like totally relaxed. Like there's no fatigue in my body going into that event. So I think Patagonia being in a similar boat, kind of like fresh and excited to ride my bike, is good. I just have to get to the point where I can ride the bike, and then we can work backwards from there. But and yeah, as far as next year goes, I'm already starting to think. I'm always like thinking about next year. This is like, you spend a career bike racing. It's like September, October is when you start to think about the following year. The majority of my partners are all, they're all 2-year deals. So this is year 1 of that deal. So thankfully I don't have that looming stress. And I think kind of that continuing evolution of what my career's looked like since stopping road, like maybe not necessarily doing specifically speed gravel, maybe more of these, maybe not more of, but some different ultra adventure type rides, and then maybe a bikepacking tour next year or something like this, and then traveling a bit more like remote or a bit more off grid to some new stuff versus so much stuff in North America. I'd like to get to Africa, get to Asia, ride different bikes, like do something on the new O2 VAM, do a little something on the hardtail that's not like just Sea Otter or Leadville, just exploring kind of like the different things you can do on different bikes. Like there's so much out there, and it's not just specifically like high-end speed. So
Rob, it's great catching up as always. If you do Patagonia or the Andes, I must get you back on and we'll chat about that, as we say over here. We'll chat some turf about that. Hope you heal up. Congratulations on Badlands. Hopefully it's not an injury that stays with you for a long time. And thanks for taking the time for chatting.
Cool. Thanks, man. That was awesome.
If you enjoyed this episode, please press up here for another conversation, which I know you're absolutely going to love. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on some amazing upcoming guests.